I've flown my entire life. I fly all over the place. I go and I have adventures. I also live in 2 places, Phoenix and Michigan. So it's like a 3.5 to 4 hour flight every time. And that was always working out well for me. But then one day in 2010, we were flying into Phoenix. And I don't know if you've ever flown into Phoenix Sky Harbor, but it's not pleasant. You have all these mountains and the hot air, and it's mixing with cool air. And can you guess what happened? We hit a pocket of air. It was a big jerk of the airplane. And there was this very intimidating man who was sitting next to me on the flight. When we hit that pocket of air, he threw his arms up in the air and screamed. And then people screamed, and then things flew across the plane. And I had a trauma response. Ever since that point, flying was horrible for me. I would clutch my Bible and sob the entire flight. Flight attendants would walk by and like kind of side eye me, or my husband and be like, "She okay?" And he's like, "She needs more Xanax." Like, I don't know what to do with her.
This is StRest. I'm Kerstin Lindquist, health coach, author, and Emmy award-winning TV host. I've committed to helping people reduce stress through impressive health science, attainable mindset change, and biblical truth. Let's have a real conversation with zero judgment and endless solutions that you can use. You aren't alone. You can do this. Let me help you reduce stress and make room for rest. I would say when I'm working with clients, one of the things that I see the most is anxiety. It's stress. Where is that line between anxiety and stress? It's fear, it's overwhelm, it's even panic, which is why when I stumbled upon one of my favorite podcasters, Max Lugavere, and his guest, Dr. Nicole Cain, I knew I had to get her on the podcast for you. She's a nationally recognized leader in trauma-informed clinical psychology and holistic medicine for anxiety and for panic. She's the author of the book Panic Proof, which is a practical guide to empowering people to break free from the grip of panic and reclaim their well-being. She's a sought-after speaker and a writer. She's taken the stage with visionaries like Deepak Chopra. She's contributed to Psychology Today and Health Magazine. She has her own wellness collective as well. Her mission is deeply personal because she's walked through a lot of this on her own, panic and insomnia. So she brings together the psychological as well as the natural medicine and lifestyle shifts to help you with your trauma healing. In this episode, we're going to talk about things that you can do in the moment if you feel like the anxiety is coming in. We're going to teach you how to know when it's coming, so hopefully you can stop it along the way. We're also going to talk about the role of what has happened in the past, your hormones, your gut health, all of that on the anxiety that you might be feeling. And most importantly, we're going to talk to you about the fact that you aren't alone, that you are worthy of healing, and why it's really important to have a lot of spoons. You got to wait till the very end of the episode to hear all of it. It's a great one, and it's Dr. Nicole Cain. Stay with us. There's so much more to come. I'm super into the research right now when it comes to creatine and collagen. In fact, let's talk creatine for a second. And the one that I trust happens to be Ancient Nutrition. Research shows that women naturally have 70 to 80% lower creatine stores than men, which means we're ideal candidates for it. And collagen we know is important not only as a protein, but it's also great for joint health. And I've been feeling the joints a little bit more. I'm in my 40s. I have that cold shoulder, women's 40 thing, that there's a lot of different things we can do, but it's really important to pump up your collagen. So I'm doing the two together, collagen and creatine, and there's actually a new product from Ancient Nutrition that puts the two of those together. Creatine is one of the most clinically studied supplements, and it's a game changer for women's wellness. It supports cognitive health. That's what I love the most about it. Muscle endurance and recovery, and it helps you build long, lean muscles and strength while staying sharp. And then you pair that with clinically studied collagen, which is what we get from all of our Ancient Nutrition products, and that can help you improve your joint comfort, your mobility, and your recovery. I take it right after a workout in the morning, and I still also love multi-collagen proteins and those peptides in my coffee every morning as well. So support your brain and your body and your beauty every single day with Ancient Nutrition so you can look toned, you can feel strong, and you can stay sharp. Here's what you do. You go over to ancientnutrition.com and put in the code STRESSED20. That's STREST20. STRESSED20 at checkout, and you'll get 20% off site-wide. Get your collagen, get your creatine, get your Ancient Nutrition. Dr. Nicole Cain, it is such a pleasure to meet you. I've listened to you on other podcasts, and I wanted you on this podcast for the longest time. So thank you for taking the time.
It's such a joy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Tell us what you do day to day. Who are you and what makes you the author of this fantastic book and somebody who can speak to us on anxiety?
I feel like my mission is trailblazing a whole new way of looking at anxiety and panic. In the old methodology is to look at anxiety as the problem, something that we have to get rid of, that we have to suppress, that we have to just sort of live with. And changing that conversation to how anxiety and even panic are clues about what needs healing and how. And I want to change that conversation so that people feel this sense of hope, this sense of power, and maybe even a little bit of excitement when looking at healing their anxiety.
I think most people, when they have a panic attack or they have anxiety, and we're going to go into kind of where the lines start to blur with stress and anxiety, but the overwhelming feeling is I need to get rid of it. Give me a pill, give me a method, let me do something to stop this now. But that's not necessarily what you're saying, especially in your book.
Yeah. What's interesting is thank goodness that we can experience those feelings of anxiety and panic. Our brain and our nervous system, they're not too concerned about our well-being. They're concerned about our safety. And so for whatever reason, for each person, it's different. And we could definitely dive into that. The body, your nervous system may think that you might be in danger, and it's doing everything it can to protect you and to inform you of that. And that's wonderful. The challenge is when you're not actually in danger. Maybe you're driving down the interstate or you're going to meet your girlfriends at lunch and your body and your nervous system starts talking to you. And it doesn't feel like there's a tiger in the woods logically, but the body has something else to say.
Let's take that, for instance, one step further, because I speak to clients who the thought of having a hair appointment during the day gives them anxiety. A thought of having to go to church, going to things that they used to love and that brought them joy. And some will say it all started with COVID, or some will say it started this age. But just the very act of having something to do can cause anxiety. What's going on there?
Have you experienced, this is something that I experienced a lot. It's the fear of the fear.
Yes.
It's like, I'm not anxious now, but when I'm sitting and I'm at that hair appointment, and there's people all around, and now I have this thing around my shoulders is kind of trapping me in. What if I lose control? What if I have a panic attack? What if I get anxious? And so then our brain starts to send signals to the body like, ooh, things might not be totally safe. And that for some of us can actually create more anxiety and even set the stage for a panic attack down the road. So that fear of the fear is what I think you're hitting the nail on the head on.
So is it a matter of talking yourself into it beforehand, or what do you do?
So we want to unpack that fear of the fear. So let's use, I like to pick on the name Susie for whatever reason. I always use Susie as an example. And so let's say that Susie's going to get her hair cut. She's super excited about it. She wants to look good. She's getting all glammed up. She's getting a little bit of sparkle, and she's getting a little overheated. She's got the thing, those, what are those heat lamps that you put over your head, and you're like reading the Vogue magazine and you're sitting there and you have the thing around you and the body starts getting overheated. And let's say that Susie is also perimenopausal. And so she's also getting a power surge, right? Hot flashes. I call them power surges. So now she has this external source of heat and she's getting this power surge and the body is getting really overheated. Now, in one example, Susie can say, oh my gosh, I'm getting way too hot. I'm getting way too anxious. I'm feeling activated. I don't know why. I just have to rip this thing off. I feel trapped. People are looking at me. Now my chest, my heart is pounding. My thoughts are racing. And oh my gosh, now I can't feel my face. I think I'm having a stroke, and on and on and on, right? So then the next time that Susie's going to go get her hair done, her brain has worked really hard to log that away. My
Yeah.
goodness, that was scary and dangerous. That was really bad. We don't want that to happen again. It was so embarrassing. It was so out of control. On the other hand, Susie's sitting in that chair. She has the thing, it's blasting her with heat. She has this cape
Cape on.
around her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she starts noticing a flush of heat. And she says to herself, okay, I'm getting a power surge right now. I don't really like how this feels. How can I take agency and respond to this power surge? I'm going to take off the cape. I'm going to remove myself from the heat source. I'm going to get a glass of ice water. Maybe I'll do some vagus nerve stuff. Maybe I'll smell some cooling lavender. Something that gives us a sense of agency as opposed to a sense of being out of control and not having any power. So it's a matter of how we respond to it in real time and trying to identify, well, why did I have that experience to begin with? Because Betty over here, she's just chilling. She's wearing the cape. She's got the head thing on. She's drinking a hot cup of coffee, for heaven's sake. She's fine. Why am I having this experience? So then the second part is to reverse engineer where that came from. Is it histamine? Are you having an environmental reaction to the chemicals in the salon? Are you having a symptom of perimenopause? And maybe we need to do a deeper look at our hormones. So then we could start to get curious about what's underneath of the symptoms so that we don't have to feel like we're playing a game of whack-a-mole where that mole comes up, you bop it, it goes away, but then another one comes up and you bop that, where then we go into the chasing of symptoms, sort of like Sisyphus, pushing that barrel, that ball up the hill and never feeling like we get to the bottom. But we can start to get curious and explore that. And that's really exciting because then suddenly we're not just palliating, we're actually getting healthier and more vibrant. And that's what we're all about here.
So can somebody Susie have the experience that you just explained
Mm-hmm.
and take that, whatever it's ingrained herself into her brain, and it kind of overlays every event outside of the house. So now it's not just going to get my hair done, but it's also going to church. It's also going to the grocery store. It's also meeting with a friend. Like that one experience hit everything.
It can. There's this study. I'm wondering if you remember learning about this like way back when you were in basic psychology 101 class of little Alfred and the fuzzy bunny. Do you remember this?
I don't think I do.
This is back with when research they were like torturing children. It was so sad, but we learned a lot. So let me tell you about little Alfred, because what you're pointing out in that question is brilliant and very, very important. So I'm glad you said it. So they took this sweet little boy, and little Alfred, and he was a few years old, and they put him in front of a fuzzy bunny. And the fuzzy bunny is so cute, and he's like reaching out and he's like, oh, the bunny. And, you know, it's a very darling picture. He is not afraid of the bunny. The bunny's great. And then they put him in front of the bunny again, and then he reaches out to touch the bunny, and they blast a really loud horn behind him that startles him. And he has a fear response. So they repeat this a few times so that then what ended up happening is that he started to become afraid when he would see the bunny because his brain had paired that startling loud horn with the bunny. But what you just pointed out when you asked that question is, can this be generalized? If Susie has this experience in one place in her life, can it be generalized to other places? And the answer is yes. And we saw this where what they found out with this research is if they put him in front of a kitten or a puppy or a stuffed rabbit or other fuzzy things, he had the same response. But what's really exciting about this is that we can repattern, we can reprogram the mind, the body, the nervous system, the immune system. We can reprogram that at any phase of life. It is never too late. And you can do it at home, and it doesn't have to cost you thousands of dollars in testing and therapy to do it.
Okay, so how? How do we do that? I know the book is called Panic Proof, so for starters, go there, but give us some insight onto how.
Yeah, I think the first step is to be really curious about what comes up. And so I'll give a personal example, 'cause I feel like concrete examples and stories help a lot for me, at least. So I was on I've flown my entire life. I fly all over the place. I go and I have adventures. I also live in two places, Phoenix and Michigan. So it's like a 3.5 to
Hmm.
4 hour flight every time. And that was always working out well for me. But then one day in 2010, we were flying into Phoenix. And I don't know if you've ever flown into Phoenix Sky Harbor, but it's not pleasant. You have all these mountains and the hot air, and it's mixing with cool air. And can you guess what happened? We hit a pocket of air. It was a
Hmm.
big jerk of the airplane. And there was this very intimidating man who was sitting next to me on the flight. And we hadn't interacted at all on the flight. But when we hit that pocket of air, he threw his arms up in the air and screamed. And then people screamed. And then things flew across the plane. And I had a trauma response. So then after that flight, I remember walking out to go to baggage claim and I called my dad and I was like, that was a really stressful flight, but I don't know, I'm not really anxious. It was just really weird. But ever since that point, flying was horrible for me. I would
Wow.
literally, my friend, I would clutch my Bible and sob the entire flight. Flight attendants would walk by and like kind of side eye me or my husband be like, she okay? And he's like, she needs more Xanax. Like, I don't know what to do with her. And I was like, fetal position sobbing. And I was not only so sure that I was going to die on a plane, but my body was terrifying me in its effort to remember that scary incident that was really not dangerous, just like Susie. It's not dangerous, but it was scary. And I was confused and I didn't have control, right? So that memorized state is showing up in the body and my heart is pounding. I'm even getting zaps of neurological shooting through my teeth, which only used to ever happen when I would go to Orange Theory and exercise really hard. Then it was happening with fear. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm going to have a stroke, all these horrible things. And then it spiral, right? To the point where I was having to sedate myself with Xanax or Ativan before flying. And I was like, this is a horrible way to live. Now, just a couple months ago, I went to Portugal. I flew to Portugal and it was beautiful. And I wasn't afraid, but we did hit some bumpy air when we flew into Madeira. And I noticed, ooh, a little bit of a body temperature rise. Interesting. Oh, I'm feeling like my thoughts are getting a little bit more like, kind of getting a little worried. And I was like, interesting. My body's talking to me. So then I used the strategies and skills to hear that, to be curious about it, to notice that, and then in real time reprogram that. And may I share with you what I did in real time to reprogram? Because this is a
Yes,
tip
please.
someone might really like. Okay. When we're experiencing activation from an activating event or out of the blue, the most important and powerful thing that we can do is to notice it and acknowledge it. If it's something that you don't have the bandwidth to deal with, you're driving down the interstate, you can't do a bunch of healing work, then we'll talk about what to do with that. But if you do have the bandwidth, my favorite strategies are to go to the body, to ground the body. So here's some practical tips. Number one is cold water, a cold pack. I love the little shaker first aid cold packs. If anyone who's gone on a picnic or done first aid or had kids and you want to have these little shaker cold packs and you could put it on your face, especially around your eyes, your forehead, the back of your neck, your chest, cool the body down. And when we put it around our face, it activates, it's called the mammalian dive reflex,
Yes.
which puts us into calm, right? We feel a little bit, our blood pressure drops, our heart rate drops, our body temperature drops, anxiety drops. But let's be real, we don't always carry cold packs. And so having a cup of ice water, asking the flight attendant for ice, cold, 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 cold. The second is to create a road between emotional brain that's like, oh my gosh, tiger, tiger, danger, danger, to logical brain that's like, it's okay. We're just having some feelings right now. And if we can make those roads, most of these feelings go in 90-second increments and it will pass. So, how do we create that bridge? May I share that part too?
Yes.
Okay, so we create the bridge by noticing the yucky feeling. And this works great with kids, by the way. So, this is a useful tool for all ages. Is you notice the yucky feeling, you notice the fear. And so Susie might set aside time at the beginning of her day when she's doing her mindfulness practice, or maybe at the end of the day, is that outside of the triggering situation, you notice the yucky feeling and you do that for about 10, 20 seconds. And then you go into what is called havening or amygdala deamplification. And what we do in the second step is we're going to use touch the entire time. And we're going to start doing mental challenges. What this does is the mental challenges is going to activate prefrontal cortex, the logical brain. This is the part of the brain that's behind the forehead. This is the part of the brain that is your sense of adult agency and power that will get you out of panic. So how do we activate that? So the touch is bringing us into real time. If you're listening to this episode, I'm doing a gesture where it's almost like you're wiping off the palms of your hand. You're kind of wiping left, wiping right. Some people really like to touch their face. There's a lot of receptors in the face, so you might repeat that. Or you could even dust off your shoulders. Just take your hands, butterfly hug, dust off your shoulders, whatever feels right. And then while you're doing the touch, is you're going to count back from 40 to 0. Maybe you'll make it more challenging and count back by twos. So 40, 38, 36. Then you might do some basic addition. 10 plus 10 is 20. 20 plus 20 is 40. And then you might even think about your favorite store. And you can imagine I'm going to go into my favorite store and I have a gift card and I get to buy 10 things. And you might imagine what you pick out, right? So we repeat that. Then we go back to the yuck and then we notice that for 20 seconds and then we go back to the mental math. And so this is clinically studied to activate emotional trigger, create a logical connection to the brain. So now we're repatterning it while calming the body. So that was I just monologued there for a
I
while.
love it though.
Yes.
So recapping, you are identifying the yuck first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what would you say, 10 to 20 seconds of that?
Exactly.
And then how long do I do? And for, again, those of you who are listening, the brushing of the hands, the face, or kind of the hug and then the brush off of the shoulders, as well as a lot of numbers, counting backwards or doing the addition. How long do you do that for?
Usually people will do this for like 2 to 4 minutes, but what you're looking for is to feel like I'm really distracted from the yuck. Because when I'm thinking about this, like I'm flying and I'm noticing the yuck. I'm like, oh, I'm feeling the heart pounding. Okay, well, I'm going to do the mental math. I'm like, wow, this is hard. I'm going to just try to do this for 3 minutes. And then you go back to the yuck. And you're going to alternate until the yuck feels neutral.
I love it. We're going to talk about more things that you can use and ways that you can help yourself if you're in this panic, this anxiety. But I would love to go backwards a little bit. Where is those lines between it's panic, it's anxiety, or it's stress? Or are they all blurred?
This is so good. So conventional medicine will define these using the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. It's this big purple book right behind me right here. It's called the DSM. It's 2025. We're on the DSM-5 and they're constantly updating it. And so this is what medicine uses to diagnose people. The challenge with this is that it puts us in a lot of general buckets. And so I've had patients and they come in and they tell me all sorts of different descriptions of what it's like for them when they feel afraid. Some people, they get chest anxiety where their heart is pounding out of their chest and they can't get a good breath and they are so afraid. And they go to the emergency department and their doctors are like, your heart is healthy, you're having a panic attack. And that's still put in the same diagnosis. Oh, you're having a panic attack or it's generalized anxiety disorder. But another person could receive that same diagnosis and they may be a 10-year-old going to their first day of school and they throw up because they're so anxious. And so the limitation that we see in medicine right now is that we're giving very, very nuanced presentations of the root causes of our symptoms, the same diagnosis and largely the same treatment. The standard of care right now is if somebody has generalized anxiety disorder or panic attacks, we'll do talk therapy and give them an antidepressant. And if that doesn't work, they'll prescribe a benzodiazepine. So the antidepressants might be Zoloft or like Effexor or Lexapro versus the benzos. You're taking a benzo if you're taking Xanax or Klonopin or diazepam or Ativan. And then, of course, there's trade-offs for that, and we could totally get into that whole thing. So what we want to do is look at what the research has to say. And the research has to say that there's a better way to define anxiety, panic, And I would argue also fear. So we'll start with fear. Fear is when we are in actual danger. Let's say Susie is now in caveman era and she's gathering in the woods and she hears a growling tiger in the distance. Her body wisely has learned that that is dangerous and we need to mount a fear response. Her heart beats faster, her blood vessels close in her extremities to send all that blood to her runaway muscles so she may get numb, tingling. Her breathing speeds up, her body temperature rises with all that metabolic activity, and she feels fear from the cortisol and the adrenaline, and she's able to get to safety. So that's fear. You have this activation in the presence of real danger. But then we have this similar activation outside of actual danger, like Susie sitting in the salon or Betty who's driving down the highway, right? So now we have this activation out of context. And so now we know that there is a maladaptation that's taking place. My body thinks we're in danger, even though we're not. And panic is when we have those symptoms in addition to feeling out of control and feeling powerless. And so then let's distill out the difference between anxiety and panic. The DSM would say they're the same in that you're experiencing those symptoms of the body anxiety and the thought anxiety. But the DSM would say that panic comes out of the blue versus anxiety has an anxiety attack, which can be an intensification of underlying anxiety. But the research doesn't seem to back that up. Is what we're finding in the research is that it's more of a spectrum, which isn't surprising, right? Everything we're finding is largely on a spectrum, where on one end, I teach about how we're in the green light zone, and these are stoplight strategies. And the green light zone is what it's like to be calm, to be grounded, to be in the body, to feel connected. Maybe you even feel a little gorgeous. Maybe you want to go with your partner and be intimate, right? It's that wonderful green light zone. Then we get a little activated because of phones or deadlines or stressors or diagnoses or caring for our loved ones. We don't want to forget the caretakers here, right? So the stress mounts and the body tells us, hey, we're experiencing a little bit of stress, just so you know. So this is the yellow light zone. This is when we're getting a little bit activated, and we have an opportunity when the body is whispering to respond to that. But if we don't hear the whisper, just like if you have a little kid that's like, hey, mom, hey, mom, hey, mom, hey, mom, and then they're right, then the body will start screaming. The body will start shouting. And that's the red light zone. And that's those crisis moments. That's the moment when Susie was sitting under that heater with her cape on. She went into red light zone. And so my question for her, if she was here, I'd say, well, what was it like between when you were not feeling anxious and the red light? Did you notice anything in between? And let's reverse engineer how you got here so that we can help you not get here in the future. So the red light is panic. And then I would say that everything in between is where anxiety lives.
That is, so you on the flight to Portugal realizing I'm getting a little hot. There was a little bit of a bump and then I'm feeling a little hot. As opposed to maybe when you were landing in Phoenix, which by the way, Las Vegas airport, same story. It is. Every time I flew into Vegas, I was just like, why? Because we used to live there. Always bumpy. Total
Always
side note.
bumpy.
But when the man screamed and you guys dropped and you weren't even looking for the precursors to the red, you just went right away to red.
Yeah. We call that an activating event. They used to use the word trigger. That may be a word that you've heard in trauma therapy. Yeah. It came from a lot of the original research into this came from combat veterans who were at war. So we call this triggered. I like to use the term activating event. I don't like the violence of the term trigger. And so something activated the body to go into I'm going to protect you mode. And so the question is what was that activating event, or were there multiple activating events? We call those big T triggers. I had a big T trigger. That was a big activating event on the airplane. But some of us, many of us, perhaps Susie, had lots of little activating events where it was building, green into yellow into red, where it finally became a big thing. So the curiosity is where the magic happens, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's it. So the key here is to I would say be able to slow down your life and your busyness and your distraction from the phones and things like that enough to be curious into what's happening to your body. You might say, I just get anxious all the time and I have these panic attacks, but you aren't slowing down enough or being curious enough to see what's the couple of minutes leading up to that, what's happening.
Yeah.
We'll be right back. Don't go away. It's just getting good. All right, I'm always telling you to get your labs done, and I'm insisting that you get specific labs done. Now there's a place to get all of that done for $199. This episode of StRest is thankfully brought to you by Superpower. It's the membership that gives you real answers about your health. What you get with Superpower is 100+ lab tests every single year, and they check everything from heart health to hormones to inflammation, and it's just for $199. No fighting with your doctor, no fighting with insurance. It's a 15-minute lab visit. The labs are everywhere around the US. You get your results in about 5 days. And here's the biggest piece that I love is that you also get a dashboard that gives you ideas and recommendations based on your lab work for your diet, for your lifestyle, which supplements you should take, even prescriptions. Here's the absolute best part. 63% of members discover early risk factors for diabetes. 44% uncover elevated heart disease risk, and 70% slow their pace of aging. Superpower is giving you superpower. It's lab data for real life changes. Join today. Go to superpower.com/Kerstin. That's KERSTIN. Superpower.com/Kerstin.
And there's a paradox here that I really want to honor for those who are listening is I'm going to get into a little bit of neuroscience because neuroscience is fun, but we'll make it accessible. And so our brains have lots of different parts, right? And so when we get activated, our default mode network, which is a group of parts of the brain, includes the amygdala, the emotional processing parts of the brain, the default mode network largely runs the show. The default mode network is the parts of the brain that collectively help us kind of zone out. We go into autopilot. We're kind of just sort of dissociated a little bit. We spend 90 to 95% of our day in default mode. It's resting. It's like you're driving. Let's say you're driving to Vegas to California. You're just going across on that big, long highway. Sometimes we're just like, I remember going through Yuma, but
Not really.
Not really. I don't know. You don't want to remember Yuma. So default mode network is largely dissociative versus your executive team. This includes your prefrontal cortex. This is when we were just teaching about havening or amygdala de-amplification with the touch and the math and the shopping, right? This is the team that's going to help you change lanes. It's going to help you problem solve. It's going to help you be logical. But here's the problem. They don't get activated at the same time. They alternate. So what we have to do is we have to practice making connections between our emotional brain and our prefrontal cortex. Because if we get activated into emotional brain and we're already getting into yellow and red, you can't think logically about it. You have to practice it. It's like, I can't wake up tomorrow and I'm going to run a 5K. No, my muscles and body have not adapted to that. We have to train. So the paradox is that our brains are evolutionarily wired so that we don't have to analyze the tiger that's going to come eat us, that we just get away. But what we want to do with intentionality and with reprogramming from our personal sense of power is we want to learn how we can activate logical brain in these moments. And so that gets a little tricky, but the way that we wire it is the way we'll fire it. So if we practice, it will become more and more automatic.
So I don't feel like I'm somebody who has anxiety or panic attacks, but I've had events like the one that you described on the plane, and I've had events that you would think, well, why don't I have that? But let's say you have that. What's the difference there? Why does it happen to some and not to others?
The unique way we develop symptoms, right, is why does one person tend to be constipated and another person tends to have diarrhea? It's like we eat the same
Mhm.
food. Like my husband, we go out to dinner, he can eat anything. He's like, we always joke that he's the garbage disposal, like that man
So
can just like eat.
frustrating.
And then I eat like one sugary piece of junk because I want it. And then I'm like exhausted and I'm blood sugary. I'm like, what the heck is that? And it's a complex question that involves looking at our genetics, our epigenetics, our gut microbiome, our hormones. And let's talk about women's hormones and how they can change and fluctuate during our cycling years. My goodness, we are very cyclical and our levels of inflammation are changing and our cortisol is changing and thus our metabolism and our neurotransmitters and our immune system is all changing. And then we start looking at environment. Maybe I have more risk factors or diatheses. And so the individual variability is unique. But what is wonderful about this conversation is that all vibes are welcome. So you may experience chest anxiety where you feel like you're going to have a heart attack, and somebody else may get a migraine. But the good news is that when we can start to be curious about our symptoms and look at them as our body's attempts to tell us what needs healing, then we can begin the process of reverse engineering exactly how to heal, no matter what the symptom is. So I talk a lot about panic and anxiety, but really this paradigm will apply to anything you're dealing with. So if somebody, like for example, what is the most common thing that you see your audience is struggling with, like on a day-to-day basis, physically or emotionally?
Hormones
Hormones. And
for sure.
how are they showing up? Like in what way?
A lot of it in anxiety like this. Sleep, and I think I heard you
Sleep.
talk about sleep too. Cannot sleep. Wake up in the middle of the night, mind racing. Wake up first thing in the morning. Like, and I've
Yes.
even that I have had, and that though I am very cognizant is hormonal. So those mornings when
Yeah.
I wake up and I'm like dreading
You wake up with that
nothing but
dread.
everything. I'm very good at saying, okay, Kirsten, that you're having something hormonal in your cycle. But I would say
Yes.
those are the big ones, like the sleep and the anxiety and the overwhelm and sadness feelings.
I so resonate with this because let's be real, sleep and emotional stuff, they go hand in hand. And for women, hormones are like sitting in the center of it. It's like the big pink elephant in the room that we're trying to squeeze around, right?
Yeah.
So okay, so let's stick with Susie. So Susie, she's perimenopausal. So her hormones are starting to change, they're starting to shift. She isn't menopausal yet, but there's been some fluctuations and she's noticing it. So she's getting a power surge underneath of that heater with the cape on, right? So let's say though that Susie's been to her doctor and her doctor says, "Yeah, your progesterone's a little bit low, your estrogen's kind of relatively normal, but it's starting to drop, but progesterone's really, really low. I need to put on the progesterone cream. Oh my goodness." But here's the question is why would Susie's hormones changing cause her to have symptoms, whereas maybe not every woman who has hormones changing has symptoms? So then we want to look at what is that telling me? And so we can get into the nitty gritty with this. I know you've actually done a lot of brilliant interviews with people who are experts in hormones, but there is a connection between our hormones and our gut microbiome. In fact, our gut microbiome regulates metabolism of hormones. Have you guys talked on this podcast about Clostridia, for example?
No, not that word.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about Clostridia because everybody needs to know about it. So, Clostridia is an opportunistic bacteria. You may have heard of it as C. diff. So somebody may go into the hospital and they may get C. diff and then they get really bad diarrhea. It's an opportunistic little bug. It doesn't have to cause diarrhea, but it can create havoc, especially in perimenopausal women. And it is often missed if it's not causing severe stereotypical symptoms. Here's what C. diff does. It can hit a whammy against us in two different ways. One is that C. diff likes to rebind estrogen. So we're trying to detoxify estrogen. We largely go through the liver and then we eliminate through the bowels. And women are trying to detoxify estrogen. But if they have the presence or too much of C. diff in their guts, which could have been an issue for the past 40 years and they just didn't catch it, it can bind that estrogen and prevent us from detoxing it. So now we have estrogen dominance type showing up. More and more and more estrogen is accumulating. And then that creates a teeter-totter effect with progesterone. And then we're using progesterone creams, but we also have lots of estrogen metabolites that we're not getting rid of. And your doctor's like, oh, take DIM, take calcium D-glucarate, take fiber, all those things. You got this, girl. So, but we have an obstacle to cure here, right? We have this opportunistic little critter that is happy in our guts. It'll also do something else that we don't love, is that Clostridia can block dopamine from getting broken down into adrenaline. So if anybody listening to this conversation feels like they're having a lot of paranoia or thought anxiety, where their thoughts are racing and they're future tripping and they're worrying and they're just really, really anxious and really scared, but also I'm flopping. I'm tired. I can't do the things that I used to do. I don't have the energy. My doctor says I'm just getting old. Take some HRT. But this could be at the root cause of this one stupid little bug. And so then we say, okay, well, what do I do about that? Right? What do I do about this? I'm trying to eat a perfect diet. I'm trying to do all of these things. This goes back to the beauty of precision medicine. When we know what it is, then we can, instead of throwing spaghetti at the wall and being like, just praying that it works, is we can be really strategic and really precise and get those good bacteria up so they can crowd out and change the acid-base balance, make it less fun, and Clostridia will want to leave. And then we kill the Clostridia using very targeted, specific antimicrobial agents. And then suddenly, I don't really think I'm having as many hot flashes, or wow, my sleep is better. Wow, I'm less anxious. Wow, my libido's better. We start feeling healthier because we looked at our symptoms as data. So that was like a long one, but
I
could
love
do
it
this
though.
all day.
So should I get a GI map? Is that where we start? Because that person that you're explaining who is anxious and future tripping, but is also exhausted,
Totally.
I think a whole bunch of women just went, oh, that's me. I have that bug.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you might, but does that mean you go get a GI map or what's next?
I'm so torn about this. I actually had a new patient in my office this morning, and I actually talked her out of it because we were able to do amazing, great healing before we had fancy GI maps.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I tell my patients is we're going to go to the foundations. And if it isn't working, or if we feel like we're just stuck on something, or if you have the financial freedom and you just want to do the GI map, sure, I love testing. And then let's retest it when we treat you to make sure it's better. Then you can do that. But let's go to the foundations first. And oftentimes the name of the game is adding fiber and increasing microbial diversity. And doing just a couple of other dietary changes would make a really big difference. And if that bacteria isn't going away and we're suspecting SIBO or maybe Candida or C. diff or maybe E. coli or something like that that's overgrowth, then we can get more precise. But I think that if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have $400 for the stool test, is add more fiber, fiber, eat green veggies, eat apples, and make sure to mix it with a protein and a fat so we're not getting blood sugary, right? Is eat complex grains and try to limit your white rice and your white pasta and your cookies and cakes. I ate a cupcake today, confessing, but you want to add more good things in and then support your gut microbiome. Your gut bacteria, my goodness, they have so much to say and they love being in a diverse group. So probiotic foods, maybe like Greek yogurt, an unsweetened Greek yogurt, or kimchi or sauerkraut or something else delicious like that. Or maybe take a probiotic if you're down with probiotic. And oftentimes that will do the trick. The other thing is I feel like every third person I encounter is on a proton pump inhibitor. That is an obstacle to cure. So that would be like Prilosec, the purple pills. Anyone?
Yep.
Yeah, that is an obstacle to cure because it's going to change the acid-base balance in the gut, which is going to make your gut a happy place for unfriendly bacteria, which is going to cause breakdown of bones and depression and anxiety and all sorts of things. So that would be a place to start too.
I am in complete agreement with you. And I love testing. I love a GI map. I love sitting there and going through everything. And I love the testing and I love supplements. But I have so many clients who I will say, we're not going to do it yet. Like it's not gonna help you if we don't have the foundations down, which is prioritizing sleep. That doesn't mean it's great, but it means we're working on it. Prioritizing movement, whole foods from quality soil, cutting out the processed stuff, cutting out as much as you can. It's the 80-20 rule. You have to have balance in your life. I had a brownie yesterday. You had a cupcake. I had a
Yeah.
brownie. And my shoulder hurts today because I have that 40s frozen shoulder thing sometimes. And I was like, oh, yep, sugar and seed oils. My shoulder's going to hurt. But it's balance, right? I enjoyed
Yes.
the brownie. But you're
Yes.
right. Before we go to the testing, before we go to the supplements, which I do think work, you have to have the foundations down.
Yes. Because otherwise what our body is adapting to and we keep it's kind of like if I have a moldy basement because I have a toilet leaking down there and I just go in and I clean up all the water and get all that water out and I use a dehydrator, all of that stuff. If I don't replace the toilet that's leaking water all over my basement,
Right.
the problem isn't there. So it's like what you're saying is if we're drinking Diet Coke and we're eating lots of brownies and cupcakes, or if we had an issue to begin with, we inherited our microbiome from our biological mother. If we inherited something, but we haven't reprogrammed that, then that's just going to keep coming back until we make those lifestyle changes.
I want to go down pharmaceutical and supplements for a second, kind of a two-part question. Supplements that you might like that you think could be helpful for women, for anybody in this area, but also what if you're that person who is on the benzos, who's on the Ativan, who cannot go to get an MRI without taking a whole bunch of Valium because they have this anxiety, or is taking it for sleep. Their doctor, I have these people in my life too, their doctor has prescribed these things to help them sleep. How do we can we safely get off of that and reverse it?
Yeah, I honor that. And, I kind of refer to it in retrospect as kind of like the rock bottom, dark circle of hell kind of an experience. You're
Mm,
like laying in the gutter and you're like, I can't get worse. And thankfully, I had access to pharmaceuticals at that time. I was able to take Lexapro, an antidepressant, and I was taking a lot of Valium at that time. And I'm grateful for that. But we don't want to put a period at the end of that sentence. And I'm so grateful that I didn't just stay drugged up as so many do, where we're walking around like zombies. And instead, let's put a semicolon at the end of that sentence. So if you're on medications, I honor you. I see you. And you've also been hanging out on this interview here for the last 30 minutes with us. So I honor you for your curiosity.
yes.
And there's so much that you can do. So let's start with benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines work by slowing down signals that our body is sending. So it's like slowing down a race car. When our heart is pounding because we're sending all sorts of adrenaline and all these signals, and our brain is racing and our nerves are racing and very, very fearful, right? Benzos like Xanax or Klonopin can slow that signaling down. It slows us down, which I want to honor you. What you said earlier is if we can slow ourselves down, then there's less for the drug to slow down. But that's an aside. We want to start the process of supporting and repairing those receptors in the brain, because it's sort of like I went to IKEA once and I saw this chair and they're like, these chairs will stand up to anything. And they had this like machine that was just like pushing on the chair and it was like going all day. And I was like, wow, this chair is taking a lot of machine pushing, right? So that will eventually break down the chair, but IKEA is like our chairs last forever. And it's like when we overstimulate our receptors with benzodiazepines, those GABA A receptors can get quite overwhelmed. And then the body's down regulating. There are going to be fewer receptors. It's going to make less GABA of its own so that we need more and more and more of the Xanax or whatever to experience the same effect as the initial dose, right? So what we want to start doing is we want to start repairing and nourishing those receptors. So my favorite supplements are actually herbs. Herbs are studied for their acts on all sorts of parts of our bodies. My favorite for the brain are called tropho-restoratives. These are herbs that help restore the brain and the nervous system. They've actually been studied on how they can help the brain and the nervous system heal. That is the coolest stuff ever, right? So staying on the benzo is we're going to start repairing. We're going to start repairing because when you taper down, those are all stressed out, down-regulated. We want to repair that. So I love Avena sativa, which is milky oats. I love Gotu kola. I love bacopa. I love ginkgo biloba. I love shatavari, which is like the menopausal queen herb.
Okay, can I just talk about my love for shatavari? And
Yes.
I haven't actually gone down my own road with it, but I've been studying it so much that I feel like it's the next big thing. Like this is going to be what changes our world, ladies, is this
Yeah.
herb.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. You just gave me like full body goosies. I love shatavari. Wild asparagus. It's not the asparagus you get at the grocery store. It's different. And so there's amazing herbs out there. People are really excited about psychedelic plants and they're really excited about THC and things like that. But there's a whole world of amazing plants that you can grow in your garden, in your backyard, all around the country. So it's so cool. And so then the second thing we want to do, so now we're healing, we're working on healing. And now we want to work on inflammation. Let's bring down that inflammation in the brain. Bringing down inflammation is the name of the game. In fact, some antidepressants help some people because they have a small anti-inflammatory action of them. But we could do way better. So I'm thinking omega-3 fatty acids. I'm thinking curcumin or turmeric. I'm thinking about lavender. I'm thinking about all the goodness in Ayurveda. And they have this wonderful mix. It's called triphala. And it's detoxing, it's nourishing, it heals the gut. It also is very anti-inflammatory. So now we're bringing down inflammation, we're healing those receptors. Now we're going to start tapering. We want to taper very slowly, no more than 5 or 10% per drop. And we're going to use a GABA bridge for that. So because we've down-regulated our receptors and we're making less GABA, when we come off, when we're getting less of the pharmaceutical GABA, we get breakthrough anxiety, breakthrough panic, breakthrough insomnia. Well, we want to make a bridge, a GABA bridge. So I have something, and I know that I want to honor the time for your listeners, but if you look up happy sleepy powder, just Google happy sleepy powder, there's a ton of information about amino acids that help our brains make its own GABA, and that's theanine, glycine, taurine, inositol, and phosphatidylserine. So
It's all in that
that's,
one happy sleepy powder.
I came up with the recipe, but you could buy all of those ingredients just a la carte at your grocery store.
I was going to say, all of those are things that I have, that I love, that I to put all those together. The inositol, which I know is fantastic. Glycine, which is a neurotransmitter, which I absolutely love.
Yeah.
What else did you say in there?
Theanine, love it. Yep. So theanine, you said inositol, you said glycine, taurine. Taurine is so good for your heart. So for those who are listening who get a lot of stress in their chest, they like feel like an elephant on their chest, they get chest anxiety. Taurine, 1.5 grams a couple times a day to get you started in the healing is just wonderful. Maybe mix that with like a little bit of hawthorn, which is contagious. A little bit of that wonderful plant. She's been studied to be so good. She's like a hug for the heart, little antidepressant, heals collagen, anti-aging, very nourishing for the heart tissue, very anti-anxiety, antidepressant. So I would maybe mix like chest anxiety, maybe a little taurine with a little hawthorn berry. So it just depends on what your body is saying. Girl, I need this. My estrogen's out of whack. I need this. Oh, my thoughts are racing. I need something to help support inflammation reduction in the brain. It's so fun.
It's so fun. Just so you know how not easy this is, though, because I hear and I honor people who are going, oh my goodness, but what's the right mix for me? And I encourage you to get a functional medicine practitioner to help you, because the big headline is you can get off of these things and they shouldn't be your end all be all, but you need some help with how and what you take and how you get there. I once heard that, especially if you're a woman in perimenopause, menopause, for like 20 years, trying to get the right mix of everything is like pinning the tail on a moving donkey. So it's really hard, and you'll have to mix things and change things as your hormones shift and as life shifts. So give yourself grace in this and know that it can take some time, but you're worth it. You're worth doing the research and trying different things.
And it does work. And I really appreciate what you're saying. And I want to echo what you're saying in that a mismatch is often responsible for why people don't feel better on a support. So I have people who call me and they're like, I'm a public speaker and I get really anxious before public speaking, but I can't take a Xanax because then I can't think and I'm a zombie. But I tried doing some deep breathing and it didn't work. And so, okay, deep breathing, a lack of breathing may not be the root cause behind your public speaking anxiety, and a lack of GABA may not be the root cause behind your speaking anxiety. So we can figure out what that root cause is while we use palliative supports. But there's a lot of nuances, you say. And when I wrote the book, I tried to teach people how to think about it in the way that I think about it and how my mentors taught me to think about it. What is your history? What is your body saying? How do we listen to it for what it's trying to tell us? How do we understand what tests to order and when? How do we understand what our tests are saying? What are herbs? How do I make my own herbal recipe? How do I know what herbs are good for me? Is it good to do theanine or is it not good? So I tried to put all of that in there. And so I love to give my books away to doctors and say, like, do this with your patient, photocopy pages, have them take the quizzes, and let's do this together.
Yeah.
Yes, because we shouldn't have to do it all alone. You are so worthy of a doctor or a functional doctor or counselor, someone who's got your back and can help you.
Yeah, that's so, so true. What is, in your opinion, doctor, non-negotiables that women can do right now if everything you're saying kind of resonates? They have the anxiety, they have the overwhelm, they have the panic that we haven't talked about already. What do you think that their life should look like? What should they do?
I think the main thing that I see with women is that we give away so many spoons being that metaphor for our currency, our bandwidth. And so we wake up in the morning and some mornings I have 10 spoons and I can help this person and help that person and be there and hold space for this person. And sometimes I wake up and I don't actually have any spoons. And yet we continue to give and give and give. And so the most important thing that I would want to encourage your listeners is start to be mindful about how many spoons you have and starting to lean into those relationships where you're giving and receiving spoons is starting to identify where am I nourishing and where am I being nourished? Because oftentimes we as women in society have been socialized to give, to be sacrificial. And yes, that's amazing and beautiful, but we are so worthy of also receiving.
Yes.
So that's where I would start. And when you finish listening to this podcast, just think about how many spoons do I feel like I have right now? And what is one source of spoons? Is it getting your hair done? Is it going to have tea with a girlfriend? Is it being by yourself in a hot bath with a book? What is it? How can you start to collect some spoons and be really intentional about that? And then the rest will start to follow. But once you get some spoons.
Right now, be a spoon collector.
Yeah.
Honestly, your own. Where can people find you?
Come hang out with me on Instagram. It's Dr. Nicole Cain, Cain. My website's Dr. Nicole Cain. I have a free 9 types of anxiety quiz. And so if you want to learn about how your anxiety is showing up, the quiz is free. Go take it. It's really fun. And I'm also all over YouTube and I have a podcast. It's called Holistic Inner Balance, where we do a lot of laughing, a lot of crying, and a lot of learning.
You are, like I said, you're an angel. And thank you for what you're doing, not only to help women and people in general, but also to empower other doctors to do some of these same things, because I think that is just so, so important. So thank you for being with us, doctor.
Truly an honor. Thank you. This has been really fun.
Coming up on the next episode of StRest, we have J.R. Mann back. He is my spiritual director, and he has quickly become your favorite spiritual director as well. He's talking all things Jesus and our relationship with the Lord. We talk about codependency. We talk about community. We talk about what we do when we're just not feeling the Lord's presence in our life, and when we feel that shame and that guilt over the fact that we're not spending enough time with Him. You know, you've all got it going on right now. We will have a great conversation and a wonderful ending prayer with my spiritual director, and hopefully yours too, J.R. Mann. That's coming up on the next episode of StRest.
If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help others find the podcast and join our community. Follow me on social media at Kerstin.Lindquist for daily tips and inspiration. And visit my website at www.Kerstin-Lindquist.com to sign up for our newsletter and receive exclusive content. The information provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions that you may have regarding a medical condition. The host of this podcast is a certified health coach and medical researcher, not a licensed medical professional, and the content shared does not constitute medical advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, we encourage you to do your own research and consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your healthcare treatment plans. Thank you for joining me on this journey to reduce stress and make room for rest. Remember, you're not alone. Keep coming back, share your story, ask for help, and give yourself grace.